It's a Thursday. It's the 5th day of June. It's 2025. Your Day Weather Podcast brought to you by ConverseCountyTourism.com. Feel the energy of Converse County. Explore Douglas's Railroad Heritage, Ayers Natural Bridge, and the Jackalope Legend. Glen Rockbo, scenic trails, dinosaur history, and small town charm. Plan your visit at ConverseCountyTourism.com. We're going to be looking at still more cool weather, more shower and thunderstorm activity, and some risk of severe weather again today. That Osprey looking backwards. Wow, that's some dexterity. Wish we could do that. Great shot there, Carl. Thanks for sending that in. So I'm going to give you the same two bullet points I gave you yesterday. Where it warms up a bit, you're going to have thunderstorms, some strong to severe. Areas of showers will be found elsewhere in the cooler areas. We're still under this upslope pattern east of the divide. A broad, weak area of low pressure covers a lot of the Intermountain West and the Western High Plains. That's keeping colder air aloft. So when the air aloft is cold and you warm up the bottom, when you warm up the bottom of the atmosphere and it's cold up top, that makes it a lot easier to get showers and thunderstorms going, especially if there's a good amount of water in the air in the lower levels, which there has been, as a lot of you experienced yesterday. We will finally warm up this weekend into early next week. A lot of areas have been trending 10, 15 degrees below normal in the Rockies and adjacent high plains. Now, the heat's been in the Pacific Northwest and along the West Coast, and that'll continue. Basically, we're not going to get rid of the late day shower or thunderstorm pattern right on through the weekend, right on through next week. But amounts will vary. It's like reading the fine print. Depending on your location, amounts of rain will vary. Some will get quite a bit, some won't. What is interannual variability? This is a very important concept to pass along, and at the end of the podcast, I'm going to talk about it because it's important to understand how precipitation patterns work in a lot of the Intermountain West. So if you want to hang on to the end of the video, we'll be talking about that. More snow squall activity in the Wind River Mountains along the Continental Divide. You can see that snow shower there over the higher peaks of the Wind Rivers. Been very cool, as we know, and when we look at temperatures for the last 3 days, this is how temperatures have looked across a good part of North America. Yeah, we've got some warm pockets. You can see the Great Basin in California there. You can see the Great Lakes, parts of East Central Canada, but a lot of the U.S. is just not jump-starting in the summer for sure, and that is giving us these lower gray-looking clouds, as we can see from Rapid City, South Dakota. Nice green up going on there. Now, so for those of you in southeastern Wyoming and parts of Weld County, Colorado yesterday, there was I don't want to call it a lone thunderstorm. It wasn't a lone, but one really stood out. And Jan Curtis, as you see a lot of videos and photos from, was the Johnny on the spot. And this is going to look familiar, this video, to a lot of you folks in Goshen County, especially around Fort Laramie and Lingle and Torrington, who have experienced these heavy thunderstorms for the last couple of days. Kind of hard to talk over the heavy rain and all of the hail coming down. You can see the water coming down the hill, rushing through, removing a lot of topsoil and rock and other things. And if you watch this thunderstorm on radar yesterday, boy, here's a good idea to always, if you have the ability with your radar app, whether you look at radar on your phone or on your PC, a lot of them will give you the option to give you storm totals, estimates. And you can see the storm formed just northwest of Cheyenne here and tracked just like this. Jan, who sent the video, got well over an inch of rain in less than a half hour, even less than that. The rainfall rates were incredible and a lot of hail. So look at the path of this thunderstorm. Went all the way down into Morgan County, Colorado. Then we had a shower thunderstorm path that came up like this. So you always want to look for patterns and how thunderstorms develop. What was interesting, this thunderstorm developed and moved from the northwest to the southeast. Later in the day, the showers and thunderstorms moved from the southwest to the northeast. This is because of this trough of low pressure. I've circled the same area for the last 3 days here, where that trough of low pressure is just sitting around. and keeping the atmosphere moist, while high pressure is making it hot in Oregon, Washington State, and parts of California. So we have this low pressure in Utah. We have basically a very weak upslope. You see these wind barbs? We continue to have this gentle flow from the east-southeast into the Front Range of Colorado, Wyoming, and northern New Mexico here. It's subtle. It's weak, but it's June. And it doesn't take much to set things off if conditions are right. So there's the upper level low back over the Snake River Valley of Idaho. And we have this broad trough like this. The summer high is wanting to build in Mexico and surge north, but the jet stream up here is saying no, not yet. So this is tomorrow. The wave is getting a little bit of movement heading to the east. So as we step through the next few days, you can see where the axis of showers and thunderstorms will be. And you can kind of see the curl around where the low is back up here, the counterclockwise rotation, keeping moist, unstable air in the same places again. And where the sun is able to peek through and warm up enough, you're going to get those showers and thunderstorms. So this is the severe weather risk today. The darker green and the yellows, where the highest risk of thunderstorms that'll produce heavy rain and hail will be a concern. Tomorrow, it gets a little bit warmer, so the expansion of the showers and thunderstorms a little bit more north now, but essentially in the same areas, getting into the high Sierra. A lot of activity in southeast New Mexico around Roswell and Hobbs and down into the Texas Panhandle there. And that's your severe weather threat for Friday. So basically kind of in the same areas, the Colorado Front Range up into southeastern Wyoming, then out into the plains. Heavy rain and hail, probably the two things that the thunderstorms are going to be good at. Now for Saturday, there's a little bit of a break because everything shifts a bit. So there will still be showers and thunderstorms, not as extensive, but they kind of make a comeback again, shifting back up to the north and west as the moisture comes back on through. So we're going to be talking about and observing occasional shower and thunderstorm activity for the next several days in those areas highlighted. Now by Sunday, the low gets consolidated up here in south central Canada. The high pressure expands a little bit. Winds aloft are still coming in from the west-northwest. So this will still pour cooler air relative to average into the central and eastern areas of the United States. Now by Monday, that high shifts a little bit more to the east, so that warms us up a bit. See this little dimple right here? There's a little upper level low coming off the west coast. This goes into what we had in May when we called it a dirty ridge, a high pressure ridge that is building but allowing small disturbances in. There's another one back here I should have highlighted. So these will kind of come in early to mid next week. And that's going to make us warmer because of the high, but the dirty ridge will keep shower and thunderstorm activity going, and it's going to beat down the summer ridge wanting to build down there in those lower latitudes. So if you look at the next 10 days, on average, the temperature anomaly for the lower 48, Mexico and southern Canada here shows that a lot of the nation east of the Rockies, if you average the days together, is going to be cooler than normal. So the forecast of a scorching hot summer, which is forecasted for many areas in this part of the country here, not saying it won't happen, but it's not going to happen in the first half of June. That's for sure. It's going to have to wait till later June or early July before it gets going. So kind of some interesting trends here in the month of June so far. So this is what I talked about at the beginning, interannual variability. So I'm not going to read the slide to you here other than to tell you that this is really important to kind of understand that if you live in the Intermountain West, Montana, Wyoming, Colorado, Utah, New Mexico, and then you could go to the western parts of Kansas, the western half of Nebraska, the western side of the Dakotas, and then really you can kind of get into Utah, Idaho there. It's a north-south strip where we have a high variability year to year of precipitation, and it makes everybody go crazy because you get a really wet year, then you're in a drought, and then you get a year or two of drought, and then you kind of go back and forth and you say, why can't it just be the same every year? Why do we have these wild gyrations? Well, the interannual variability is really driven strongly by the influence of the Pacific Ocean and the El Nino, La Nina cycles, or the El Nino Southern Oscillation that we call it, that I talk about all the time with sea surface temperatures. And the Intermountain West, basically it's the poster child for interannual variability. So many times we talk about averages, or the average temperature should be, the average rain should be. That is really a difficult thing to pin your hat on, because in this part of the world, you really don't have year-to-year consistency, because you don't have year-to-year consistency or 3 or 4 years of consistency in the Pacific Ocean. And where we sit in terms of topography and latitude and our relationship to where we are with these big bodies of water upstream really makes it tricky. And the best way to really highlight this is what I did is I went to the Western Regional Climate Center and I grabbed all of the precipitation data from locations in Wyoming going back to 1895 and put it together. Now, this doesn't include every location in Wyoming. Not every location in Wyoming was reporting in 1895, but several locations were. So if we were to reconstruct it and say, for the weather stations we know that we have good data for, and we were to put it all together and graph yearly precipitation from 1895 to last year, what do you see here? When we talk about interannual variability, it means what you don't see is a consistency. What you see are a lot of peaks and valleys. The peaks are when you're wet. The valleys are when you're dry. And what you see here from 1895 to present is that interannual variability. You never are going to get consistently 5 or 10 years in a row of the same amounts of precipitation. You're going to have these high variabilities. And when you only average statewide around 15 inches of moisture a year, which is generous in some areas, if you're off 2 or 3 or 4 inches, that makes a big difference. If you're Iowa, where you average 30 to 40 inches of rain a year, if you're off 4 or 5 inches, it's not a big deal. It's not as big a deal as it is in a lot of areas of the Intermountain West. Now, I could show you a similar graph for other Intermountain states as well, but Wyoming really highlights it. So it's really hard to expect consistency with precipitation. And the data bears it out, and the data bears it out going back to 1895. Now, you got to be careful with graphs. I always warn people, be careful with graphs that are presented to you in the media, because you can torture the data and make it say anything you want. And this is a good highlight. If I were to throw, I just threw this into Excel and I threw in the trend line. The trend line suggests that the average precipitation from 1895 to 2024 is increasing across Wyoming. The trend line shows that it's not very much. But you could say, well, Wyoming's precipitation's increased since 1895. Well, the graph shows that. But that trend line doesn't mean anything, because look at the variability in precipitation year to year going back to the late 1890s. We're not going to be able to change that. This is where we live in this part of the world. But this does make people kind of lose their minds when one year you're irrigating like crazy, you're wondering how you're going to stock your livestock on your land, and you have a really good year and you go, well, I'm going to stock up, and then you get a really bad year. The one consistent part of precipitation patterns in the Intermountain West is its interannual variability. That's why long-range climate modeling and forecasting runs into big problems, because of this variability going back and forth. So, threw a lot at you. We'll have more for you tomorrow. Have a good Thursday.